Good afternoon. Welcome to the Development Control and Regulatory Board on Thursday, the 8th of February. It's just 2 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. Might I remind everyone present that the meeting will be broadcast live via the County Council's website and will also be available for viewing on the County Council's website after this meeting. Can I welcome Mr. Parton, who's joining the board in replacement of Mrs. Taylor. Welcome, Mr. Parton.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Start with the agenda then. The agenda item number 1 is minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of December. If we go through them on page by page, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's it. 7. Moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 2 is question time, with no questions has been received. Item 3, questions asked under members' standing orders. We haven't any of those either. To advise, item 4 is to advise members of other items the chairman has decided to take. I haven't anything else to report. Item 5 is declaration of interest. I would like to state that it is noted that all members who are also members of a parish, town or district council or liaison committee will have personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any other interests anyone would like to declare at this time? No? Moving on. Presentation of petitions. Item 6, we haven't any petitions. Now we come to the agenda items proper, which is item number 7, which is an application for New Albion landfill site at Albert Village. Can I ask Lonick to speak to this report then, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you will have an additional report circulated to you, which is a report of the site visit that occurred on Tuesday of this week, which I'll come to in a moment. So this is an application to extend landfilling at Albion landfill site, and the first slide you have there is the location for members who are not familiar with the site. Ashby there, and you can just see the site. It's quite an extensive site, but the bit that we're talking about is primarily in here, which I'll come on to in a moment. This was a position back in June 2016, and you'll see from the report that this site has a long history dating back to 1999 when the original permission was granted, and at that time there was quite a strict stipulation in terms of how long it would take to complete the site, and at that time the conditions were 31st of December 2014 or 13 years, whichever is the sooner. And there was a legal agreement attached to that, but over the years that agreement has, you've agreed not to impose certain elements of that agreement, and you'll see from the history that you've already had 2 requests for extensions because the landfill operations have run into trouble in terms of trying to get this landfill completed. The major stumbling block was right at the beginning of the process when they were faced with a legal challenge which took quite a number of years to resolve, so they didn't actually start landfilling till 2005. When it got to the 2014 date, or just before that, they did apply for an extension for 1 year up to the end of 2016. They didn't manage to finish that, and they asked for a further extension to the end of 2017 last year. So this is the 3rd request now for a further year up until 2018. As part of the previous extensions, because they couldn't finish the site, they also had a revised restoration approved in order to restore it in a way that wouldn't see the whole site completely filled. So here you'll see that in June 2016, in the middle of the last extension, this was the void area. This was proposed for a lake. There was some capping done and some soiling, and as they moved on to this year, more was capped, more was filled in, and importantly, they completed what's called a big containment bund in order to contain the landfill in this area, but also to enable this lake to be created. So at the end of 2017, they hadn't quite finished. They're asking for another year in which to complete. So in terms of the site as it stands at the moment, I referred to the site visit that wasn't undertaken earlier this week. I'll just show you that the members travelled to the site, which is in here, travelled along here from Ashby, past the new development, new houses that are currently under construction here, down Occupation Road, past the site, and then up Mushroom Lane, and they viewed previous workings here, down Occupation Road, and then into the site. And this is the entrance into the site with a compound there, and then they travelled through the site. This is a clay stocking area, which is nothing to do with this site, but access is through the site, and it goes under the road and into the landfill here. And from this photograph, you can see pretty much reflects the drawings I just showed you, is that this is an area is going to be left for lake. Roughly, this is where they're infilling now, and this is subject to ongoing restoration. On site, I took a few photos for the members who couldn't attend. This is the proposed lake area, not completed yet. They've got to do some works around the edges here. The revised restoration scheme shows some shallowing of the water, which I'll come to in due course. But this is the containment bund that is now complete at its full height. And on this side, I'll show you some photographs travelling leftwards where the void space is. So if we move leftwards, you can see that's the bund that we just looked at from that side, and this is the remaining void that's left to fill. This is currently being filled and soiled in a progressive manner. Again, I'll just move, oops, sorry, wrong way, a bit more left, just to see a bit more of the site on this side, and then again where they're currently operating. So you see the bund there. Sorry, it's not very clear, but that's the bund there. So really, they're going to fill the void that I showed in the previous photograph, and then sort of grade back with soils across there. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what's being proposed. In terms of the restoration, that's what was approved because they couldn't fill the whole site. The regional plan was to fill right across here. That was the approved plan back in 2014 with the lake. The revised restoration plan is to shallow these lakes here in order to give a bit more biodiversity and opportunity for wildlife to occur, and also add some amenity value. And just see that in a bit more detail. You can see they're going to put use some material from the site to shallow the shores of this lake. The lake is around about 20 metres, or will be about 20 metres deep at its deepest point, so it is helpful to have the shallowing on this side. And then here's just a cross-section through the lake, and you can see a typical sort of cross-section here shown with the plants and the shallowing of the site. I think that's all I've got to say on terms of the description of the site. From the report, you'll see that the estimate in terms of the void space on the photograph that I showed you, the company now estimates, it's quite clear now, there's about 200,000 cubic metres And based on their current input rates, that is about a year's worth or a bit less than a year's worth of infilling operations. So as far as we can be, we're fairly confident that that is what they've got left. You can see that by the way the site's engineered. And in order to assist that restoration, you've seen what they're proposing in terms of the restoration. You'll see also that there have been concerns raised. Ashby Zeus Town Council has no objections, but Ashby Wolds, Overseal and Woodville Town and Parish Councils do object. And from what I said at the beginning, there was an expectation that this site would have been finished by now. So you can understand why people are concerned that this is carrying on longer than the community anticipated. There have also been some representations that have been put in, concern about litter, about lorries going into the site the wrong way. There is an agreement about how lorries should approach the site. Issues around odour and litter too. Yesterday, I also received a further late representation, which you haven't seen yet, but it's from the Blackfordby and Boothorpe Action Group. Quite a long letter, 2-page letter, and they've been very active in the development of this site. Although it's a long letter, the essence of the letter is they really explain their involvement in this site and their current involvement with the operators, and they say they've been working very closely with them about the progress on the site. I think the upshot of what they're saying is they were never happy with the original scheme. That's why they formed the action group, and they're not really that happy with the site continuing. But on this occasion, they say they understand why it's necessary, and they do agree with the recommendation contained in the report. They do raise 3 other matters that they want you to take into account. The first is they want you to say that this will be the last extension, that you will agree. Secondly, they are concerned about the traffic movements, and this has already been raised by others, and wondering whether there's anything else that can be done to improve enforcement of site. And also, they raise the issue about odour, and which they accept is weather dependent and whether some positive action can be taken on those issues. I'll address those in a moment, but in general terms, I think from the report you'll see the reasons why this site hasn't progressed in a way it should have done, and I think there are justifiable reasons. There is an end in sight, as you can see from the engineering and the estimates of void space left. In terms of whether there's a need to continue landfilling generally in the county, I think the answer is there is a need to dispose of this type of waste. There's only one other site in the county, and that's Shall, which is a landfill site. There is a facility at Newhurst Quarry, which is an energy from waste facility, which has got planning permission, but not yet built, and unlikely to be built before this comes to an end if you agree to the extension this afternoon. I mean, the whole scheme was part of a wider Ashby Wolds regeneration strategy, which has been going on for a number of years. And clearly, I think everybody wants to see the end of this, but I think our view is that, you know, and his recommendation, that there is a clearly defined void space left. There's good reasons to expect that it will be finished by the end of this year. So the recommendation to you, Chair, is to approve the additional year. And in terms of the response to the points raised by the Blackfordby and Boothorpe Action Group, I don't think you're in a position to say this will be the last extension. I don't think you can do that because you can't fetter your discretion in determining a subsequent application. Secondly, traffic. There is a routing agreement where lorries have to turn out of the site left and come in from the same direction. Lorries have travelled up and down Occupation Road. It's not clear whether those lorries were going to this site or not. And the only way that can be properly checked is whether information on registration of a lorry then can be checked on site. Other than that, I think that's the best we can probably do. Odour is something that is addressed by the company. They have a odour monitoring and management plan. The Environment Agency has been on to the company on this. It is their responsibility in terms of controlling odour, and you'll see from the report the actions that have been taking on that. So at that point, Chairman, I'll pause and see if members got any questions.
Well, thank you for your comprehensive report on it. We do have a speaker on this item who is the local member, Mr. Sean Sheehan. Sean, would you like to sit over there? I'm sure you know the drill. You have 5 minutes, and if you just remain seated, just in case after you finish that there is a question from any members for clarification only. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm one of the ward members. Of course, you're the other one, because the boundary changes now put some of this into your area. So, anyway, was anybody actually here 18 months ago when this came up the last time for an extension? Yeah. Do you remember what I said at the time? No, I said we need to draw the line somewhere. And it's okay being reasonable, but I think we've been reasonable here. You know, and look where it's got us. We're back for another 12 months. I said they will be back again and again and again. Now, I think the only way to sort this out is to go to the policy. If you look in your report at paragraph 16, the MPPF states that local planning authorities should ensure work land is reclaimed at the earliest opportunity. Yeah? Paragraph 48 of the report, which is further on. I haven't got the page numbers on this. Leicestershire Waste Core Strategy Policy WCS 7 says that you shouldn't be granting planning permission for new or extended sites unless, and all these three reasons apply. I'll just quote the one. It can be demonstrated that there is an overriding need for the facility. And yet, just 2 paragraphs down from there, it said it is considered that there is evidence to suggest the existence of an ongoing need for the landfill capacity to be provided over the next 12 months. Now, that's not what the policy says. It says an overriding need. So we seem to have fallen short of that criteria, and I do wonder why that is. Could it be that some of this waste is coming in from outside the county? We were told in the site visit, and we were told at the liaison committee, that some of the waste is coming in from Rugby. I don't know how much. But clearly, that's not an overriding need for Leicestershire, and that's what our policies address. So it seems to be it's more about making accommodations with the operators need, frankly. So I would suggest that the level of need, as per the assessment, falls short of the criterion that we've set in our own policy. And I think in summary, I would say that when I said that we need to draw the line somewhere, I say that line's already been crossed. They're actually in breach of the policy because they should have stopped tipping, the breach of the last planning application because they should have stopped tipping at the end of December. So they're actually in breach. Of course, we won't take action while there's another planning application in, and they just got it in under the wire in November. So they've exceeded their permission for tipping. The MPPF says that the land should be reclaimed at the earliest opportunity. The application falls short of the criterion for making an exception, which are very strict and very clear in our policies. Local residents, I believe, have put up with it long enough. Veolia have had their chance to restore this, you know. They had it 18 months ago, they've had a full year. And I think we also need to be aware that by going against our own policies, the County Council is making it harder to restrict extensions in the future, both on this site and on other sites throughout the county. I think we need to be very mindful of that, Chairman. We've been reasonable, we've made an exception. Here we are, we're being asked to make another. Where do we draw the line? I've said it before and I'm saying it again. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions for Sean from anyone? Dan.
Thank you, Chairman. The use of outside of our area, Leicestershire infill, was quite well explained. The more they could get in, the quicker they could get it in, the job would be done, which you were a party of that explanation. So I think if we prevaricate and make excuses or say it should only be this or that, I believe as quick as it can be done, it's going to be better for the site and better for the local people. And with the way they were describing the gradients and what it would be left as a leisure facility.
Excuse me, Dan. It really needs to be a question.
Oh.
It really needs to be a question.
Apologise, yeah.
A question with clarification.
Yes,
rather
all
than-
right. Thank you. Can I? Yeah. Could you just confirm that you heard the operators say that they were bringing in stuff from another outside of the area to help the speed up the infill? Thank you.
Yes, I did, but I don't see how that equates to an overriding need for Leicestershire to take waste for any longer on this site.
David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was on the site visit this week, and I recall we've been there before. And it certainly was said that they're going to bring other stuff in from Rugby to fill the site quicker. But is there anything on this planning application that says they can't do that?
Can someone answer that, please?
No, Chairman, there isn't any restriction in where the waste comes from, because the way the policy has to work for the county, because clearly waste travels across administrative boundaries, and this is common for all waste planning authorities. What you need to do is provide facilities equivalent to what you need. So some of Leicestershire's waste will go out of the county, some other people's waste will come into the county, but it's the overall balance. As long as we've got the equivalence of what we need, there'll be flows across the boundary. But that is the duty that that we have. So hence the overriding need isn't just for Leicestershire waste. It's an overriding need for an equivalent level to cope with that amount of waste.
Thank you, Lonnie. Are there any more comments or questions? Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a query, really. I notice, in particular, Overseal are complaining about the mud on Park Road, and it says in the report that there are wheel washing facilities. Have they been checked out? Are we sure that they're actually using them, or are they bypassing them? Because it says in some areas it's up to the top of the curbs, and if that's the case, then I presume if there's curbs, there's road drains, and it's causing us a problem. If they're blocking all them, which it certainly will do, we should be checking that if that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, we did experience wheel washing ourselves from those Land Rovers that we went in when we went on the site visit. So, and also we did see lorries having their wheels washed at the same time. But I don't know whether Lonnie can add any more to what.
No, Chairman, I think I was just going to say what you said. The wheel wash facilities are there, and they're there to be used, and they should be used. And we do check whether they are used when we're on site. Thank you.
Okay. Been moved by Dan and seconded by David. That is to permit, is it? To permit the, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, if we take a vote on that then, please. All in favour of that? That looks to be unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 8, agenda item number 8, which is tarmac trading at Mount Sorrel. Could I ask Lonnie to deal with this item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a variation of a planning condition to retain the working hours or the pattern of working hours that you agreed for a temporary period last time that the request was made. You will recall, Chairman, it's clear from the report that prior to 2014 they were allowed to operate the coating plant overnight up to 3:30 in the morning during the week and 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night on Sundays and public and bank holidays. But they were limited to a number of occasions per year, 120 in all, 15 of which were Sundays, public and bank holidays. In 2004, they came to you and asked to vary that. In other words, they didn't want any more overall hours in terms of what they were allowed, but could they work those number of hours more flexibly and not be limited to 120 occasions. So what they did is they timed 120 by the hours of operations that they needed, and they came up with the hours. So that's what you allowed, but you put a limitation on that because you wanted to test out whether that was going to be acceptable. And that carried on for a couple of years. They came back and asked whether you were happy with that, and I think you were still a little bit unhappy, so you gave them another year, and that was until the end of last year. Now they've come back and said, look, we've done some more work, we've had 2 or 3 years of this now, are you happy to grant us not a permanent permission, they're asking, Chairman, they're asking for 5 years, and that's the proposal before you. And you'll see from the report the reason why they want that, which is the same reason that they asked for you last time, is to give them flexibility to meet contracts, particularly for delivering tarmac to roadworks, which these days you'll know that tend to be done overnight in order to avoid congestion of traffic during the day. So in terms of the plans that we've got, just shows you the location of the coating plant which is there, and the surrounding properties. This is just an aerial photograph to give you a better impression of the site. That's what coating plant looks like. So that's all we have for you, really, just to give you some idea. In terms of how this has been operating over the past few years, you'll see that there have been some complaints. In recent times, there have been less complaints, but still been some complaints about noise in particular. But those have been investigated, and they haven't been able to be attributed to the plant itself. Since the preparation of this report, there has been a further complaint received, and this has been raised with the company, and they do accept that there has been a problem in terms of the burner for the coating plant had trouble starting the burner, and when they did, the plant was running empty for a short time. So there was an issue which caused some concerns on that incident. There are noise limits which were set, and as far as we are concerned, those limits have been met in terms of the noise criteria. That doesn't mean to say you can't hear it, it just means that they are within the limits that we've set. And you'll see from the report that the company does have a number of measures in place. They have a noise monitoring and management plan, they have a dust management and monitoring plan, and also an odour monitoring and management plan. And all those are kept up to date and kept under review, and the noise monitoring report is reviewed at least every 2 years. So that is the proposal before you, Chair, and the recommendation is to approve as per the recommendation.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you for your, again, detailed assessment. Have we had nothing I understand from Mr. Osborne, the ward member or local member? We have 2 speakers on this item number 8. Objector and the applicant. The objector, Mr. Carl Clayton, Are you here, Mr. Clayton? Yeah. Would you like to just sit over there, please, Mr. Clayton? I'm sorry, you really need to.
14.
Sorry?
Sorry, Chairman, perhaps I'll just better answer that. It is 2014. If I didn't say 2014, I meant 2014.
Okay, Mr. Clayton, you've got 4 minutes to state your case, and if you just remain there after you've done speaking, in case there's any member needs to ask any points of clarification from you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Carl Clayton. I live approximately 400 metres from the coating plant. I'm aware that I've got limited time, so I'd just like to re-emphasise some of the points of my objection. The variation's been granted 4 years ago, as we've just discussed, and this has vastly increased the number of occasions that this plant is operating after 10 p.m. at night. I've got figures from the County Council Planning Officer, and I'd like to just point out that since 2012, when it operated 33 occasions after 10 p.m, in 2013 it operated 184, 14 246, 15 240, 16 247, and 17 236. This gives you an indication of how much this plant, the operation of this plant's been increased in the night time. So this really is all about increased operation of this plant during the night time. And I don't think really the paperwork's made that clear to residents. There have been some improvements in noise reduction, but short-term noise still is a problem. It really still is a problem. One of the reasons given by Tarmac to one of my noise complaints was that there's so much equipment to try to check and find the source, and at the time the noise monitors weren't working. Now I think this gives an indication of the potential for noise disturbance from this plant and how quickly it may or may not be dealt with by Tarmac. Charnwood Environmental Health Officer has been really helpful to me. States in the report made that the following should be considered: noise deadening linings to the chutes, silencing to pneumatic doors, enclosure of burners. After 4 years of temporary variation of this plant, the hours of this plant, and supposed to be ongoing noise management plans, why have such problems not been addressed by Tarmac? She's considering these 4 years afterwards. So I believe this gives an indication of Tarmac's ongoing poor management of noise on this site. And my last point is that planning permission states that this plant will only operate during the night time, Sundays and bank holidays, to supply essential contracts. The County Council Planning Officer informs me that he's not able to put a system in place to check this. I've asked for a one-off to be checked, was given the wrong information. And there seems no system in place at all, and I'm told that it can't be put into place to check that these are only supplying essential contracts. And I find this very concerning. For these reasons, I'm just asking you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Thank you for your time. Monica, have you got anything to say on Mr. Clayton, what Mr. Clayton has said so far?
Thank you, Chairman. Maybe just a few comments. It's quite true what Mr. Clayton says. Operations, the number of activities has increased. That's the nature of the flexibility that you granted them. And yeah, that is true. The amount of time each operation lasts does vary. Some are very short, some are a bit longer, but on average they're so between 3 and 4 hours per occasion. The point, though, is are those operations, regardless of how much there are they acceptable environmentally? And I think that's the test. You know, can they operate within the limits set? The Environmental Health Officer's comments, again, that's true. That's what the Environmental Health Officer has recommended. These are possible recommendations to tarmac. I don't believe they are essential requirements to make good some kind of exceedance of limits. I think they are helpful in order to make the plant even quieter. But those are matters for tarmac to address. And the last point, in terms of the supplies, the conditions and the requirement of the planning conditions does not say essential supplies. It just says to meet the requirement of supplies. So it's what's required by the contract, not. It doesn't say essential. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. The second speaker is from the applicant, Mr. Anthony Cook, and David Jarvis Associates. If you'd like to sit over there, please, Mr. Cook. You have 4 minutes in which to speak, and if you would remain in the chair after that to see if there's any questions of clarification from members. Mr. Cross. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon. My name is Anthony Cook. I'm the planning agent for this application, representing the interests of Tarmac Trading Limited. The requirement to retain the working hours permitted by Condition 26 remains as pertinent as ever. It's detailed within your officer's report. There remains a clear need for nighttime and weekend working to ensure flexibility in meeting demands for highway maintenance and enhancement. The method by which the coating plant hours are controlled during the nighttime and the weekend has been in place since 2014. In that time, Tarmac has made great strides in implementing site improvements to control the emission of noise, dust and odour. In addition to this, there are a range of planning conditions, evolving management plans and ongoing monitoring requirements that ensure the emissions from the plant and wider quarry remain within acceptable levels. Tarmac is aware that isolated incidents do occur occasionally and give rise to complaint, and they welcome input from local residents when such incidents do occur. All complaints are duly investigated. Indeed, Tarmac has a long history of open dialogue with the local community and remain conscious of striking the right balance between evolving site operations and efficiency and maintaining residential amenity. Evidence does, however, suggest that the continued investment in site improvements and updates to noise and odour management plans has resulted in significant reduction in complaint from the local community. For instance, there have been no complaints regarding odour emissions since March 2016. Notwithstanding this, in November 2016, controls of odour emissions were tightened by the implementation of an odour management and monitoring plan. The most recent odour assessment submitted in support of this application demonstrates that emissions remain within acceptable levels. With regard to noise, there have been 6 complaints since temporary permission was granted in November 16. As mentioned, each of the complaints are duly investigated to locate the source of the nuisance sound, and appropriate action is taken to eradicate or mitigate the noise. With the exception of the complaint regarding noise emanating from the railhead at Barrow, all of the complaints stem from a breakdown of machinery rather than any specific site operation. Indeed, it is extremely notable that only 1 complaint has been lodged that is attributable to the coating plant operation. This was investigated and shown to be an isolated incident caused by faulty machinery. The fault has now been repaired, and Tarmac are confident the works undertaken will ensure the nuisance noise is not encountered again. Overall, the notable improvements to the management and monitoring of noise events, combined with the proof that odour emissions are within acceptable levels, should reassure the committee that the coating plant controls can be retained for a further temporary period without detriment to residential amenity. By approving this application, Tarmac will remain flexible to meeting highway demands. thereby maintaining a valuable revenue stream. This revenue stream provides Tarmac with the means to continue to invest in measures to reduce emissions from the coating plant. The temporary 5-year period sought by the application places an onus on Tarmac to continue to make site improvements. Evidence proves that significant strides have been made in the past 4 years to ensure that the coating plant is operated at night and during weekends without detriment to residential amenity. This will only be improved upon during the further coming years. On behalf of Tarmac, I therefore urge members to follow the recommendations made by your officers and support this plan application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions? Tony?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Oh. No, you want to bring that up again?
Just a general question.
Okay. You're free to go then, Mr. Cook. Lonnick, did you want to say any more at this stage, or are you okay?
No, I don't. No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Tony?
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. Which we mean the whole site, or sorry.
Well, it goes back to the noise management and monitoring plan. There's a regime for monitoring noise, and also the same with dust and the same with odour. We've got plans in place to ensure that appropriate monitoring takes place. And in support of that, there are quarterly meetings with the Kent Council and Charwood Environmental Health, Tarmac and their consultants to review the works that have been taking place, the monitoring that's been undertaken, and to see what further actions may need to take to occur.
Okay. Mr. Bolter?
Mr. Clayton mentioned some of the equipment as noisy and expected some enclosure or something around the equipment to deaden the noise. Be waiting 4 years. When's that likely to happen or not? I mean, surely, if he's got some noisy equipment, it's normal to encase that in some structure to keep the noise down, or to have some noise deadening.
Chairman, I think my understanding is that there was a recommendation from the Environmental Health Officer that there are things that can be done to help with noise reduction, but that wasn't on the basis that there was a noise problem or a breach of the condition. So it's a matter for Tarmac to take on board, and if they are serious about improving their operations over the next 5 years, and if you were to grant them that limitation, maybe that's something you would expect them to address during that period.
Can I come back, Chair? That doesn't really satisfy the question, does it? Because they've not done it up to 4 years. They could not do it at all. That doesn't seem to me very fair. So I thought if we're going to extend it for any period of time, there can be a condition on that this work is carried out.
Chairman, it's up to members to decide how they want to deal with this proposal. Clearly, there is no breach of the planning conditions. There may have been complaints, but they have been investigated, and that doesn't mean to say that they're doing anything wrong with the restrictions that we've imposed. So, and they are not breaching the planning controls that are in place. So adding these things won't, they'll still be in compliance with their conditions. So it's the reason you need to put on. What is the reason that you would insist that these go on? It'll make it better, but it's already okay now, I think, is in terms of the planning restrictions.
Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Similar sort of similar item. I found out this morning that the people that monitor it are Tarmac, which that concerns me, and I said that this morning. It's, to me, there should be outside bodies at least checking it occasionally. This particular unit is obviously necessary because everybody moans like hell if the roads are all dug up when they go into work or something. So we've got to go along with the application because working out of hours is a modern thing. But having said that, there should also, because of that need, we should be protecting the residents as much as we can. And it worries me that the only people that monitor it are the company themselves. And it also concerns me when Mr. Clayton says the monitors are not always working. So, you know, I think we ought to be tightening up on the conditions. But having said that, we haven't got a choice but pass it because nobody wants to have massive traffic jams everywhere.
Mrs. Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I think with the increases in the traffic noise, etc., in the evenings and at night, I think we should be trying to go some way into making it better for the residents. And I think if we can't impose conditions on doing anything about noise, then I think perhaps a letter from the committee should go, because I think Tarmac should be seen to be trying to mitigate against some of this. I know it may not be at the levels that people consider, but if I was living next door to something with 200 and odd nighttime visits or whatever, I think I would be quite put out by it.
Are you able to?
Thank you, Chairman. Committee at liberty to put an informative on the decision they make, say that if you agree with the recommendations, fine, but you would encourage Tarmac to improve their game. And I think you've heard the company today, which they gave a commitment that they are improving and they want to improve. So I should think it would chime with what they want to do anyway.
Mr. Bolter.
This is an application to extend existing permission. Perhaps the legal representative can tell me. Can we put additional conditions on at this stage or not?
Well, through you, Chairman, yes, of course, you can put conditions. However, you do need to be mindful that you do need to require planning reasons to justify the imposition of the condition. And, of course, all conditions can be appealed against.
Yes, Chair, but I think we need to form some sort of wording around a condition that this noise reduction, whatever it can be, should be done with a reasonable period of time. I don't mean 4 years, but I think if we're going to continue this operation at the hours they want to do it, and we understand national reasons why, and that's fine, but, you know, we've got to look after the residents' concerns as well. So, the wording of that condition, I think we'll have to leave to officers, but I think something needs to be tightened up, that some work's done within a reasonable within 12 months, the condition being granted that noise reduction measures are installed on the equipment.
Second that, Chairman.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. It is possible to put additional condition on if you are minded to do that. I don't think it's possible for you or for me at this moment in time to specify what those measures will be, but you could put a condition on that within 12 months you want to see a scheme from Tarmac which identifies how they're going to improve and what they're going to do in terms of cladding or whatever they're going to do. What is it that they're going to do, and submit that within 12 months, and then we will have a chance to see whether that is acceptable to us. That's one option, Chairman, but I'm in your hands, Chair, to how to go forward on this one.
Well, I haven't got a proposition from anyone at the moment, but obviously...
Chairman, you have. I proposed it and Mr Cook seconded it.
Oh.
Condition on.
I do apologise, I've missed that then. Okay. Well, Tony.
Chairman, I'm more than happy to move the recommendations with bearing in mind Leslie's comments about movement in the evening and noise, and whether you can construct a letter or a note to go to the applicant in relation to that. And I'm also happy to take on Mr Bolter and Mr Crooks' comments, if that's okay with you, to be attached to that recommendation.
Got 2 or 3 lots of seconders and proposers now. So I think perhaps between us we've got to where we want to be with the proposal and the conditions.
Just ask Mr Crooks to say something.
Mr Crooks, could you enlighten us on?
I think it would help the committee then to do it this way, Chairman, if you're happy with this, and members, that first of all, because we do need some planning reasons, we need to be very specific that we should, as something has been moved and seconded with regard to the requirement for an additional condition along the lines suggested by Lonick, that should be dealt with first of all. That should be your first vote. And then, depending on how that vote goes, then look at the recommendation as amended by the addition if it's passed. And then in that way we've got a structured way of doing it. So we take if I'm calling what's been moved and seconded, if you like, technically an amendment, to have that moved and dealt with first of all, and then move to another vote on the recommendation.
Okay. Do you want to say something else?
Chairman, so just to understand what Mr Cross is saying then, so the proposal is that we have an additional condition, the wording which we'll clarify in more detail, but the essence of it is that within 12 months that Tarmac submit measures and schemes to improve the noise output from their operations, to be agreed by us. And the reasons for that is, I assume, Chairman, on the lines of to protect the amenities of local residents will be the planning reasons.
Okay, so we're having a vote on that then, by the sound of it. Okay. All in favour or not? Okay, that looks to be unanimous then. Take another vote, Mr Crooks.
So now you vote on the recommendation before you from officers as amended by the decision to impose an additional condition to be agreed by officers.
Okay. Okay, so it's been moved by Tony, seconded by Dan. All in favour? Well, that's unanimous again, thanks.
So that includes the letter. What about the letter?
There's a recommendation for a condition, which is stronger than an individual letter.
It was only I was conscious it had to be a planning reason.
Yes.
That's how it was worded, or else diffused.
Yeah. All right.
Right. Thanks very much. Moving on to agenda item number 9. Which is a variation of condition at Woodhill Farm, Nottingham Lane, Old Dalby. Lonick, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a proposal to ask your permission to increase the height of soil stockpiles at a soil improvement operation near Old Dalby, and also to an additional area for where they can stock this material. So the location is as shown on the plan. There you'll see that this is a farm which has diversified. It has a number of small business industrial units along here. And within the site there is a soil improvement facility where they bring in soils from, say, house builders. They improve it and then sell it as a topsoil, high-quality product. It's been operating for 30 years, according to the applicant. There has been a planning application which regularised all this back in 2015, and the request is to modify the restrictions that was put on at that time. So they're currently asking for 3 areas here. These 2 are already in place, but they want an additional stocking area here. This is the industrial site. They come in off here. The nearest property is here. The owners, sorry, I don't know, that's I'm not sure that's a farm there, but this is where the proprietors live. And the stockpile, as it currently stands, soil is, as you see there, it's around about 8 to 10 metres now. They want to go up to 12 metres, so it's not a lot higher than what you see there. And then the rest here are just some photographs in and around the site, which shows you the relationship between the stockpile and beyond there is the industrial estate adjacent to the site. This is just part of the open area, some hedgerow along there, along the lane, which you'll see a picture of in a moment. This is the lane that I was just talking to, so it is behind there, behind a 3-metre high hedge. That's the property there. Again, view into the site from a footpath point and a view into the site from an agricultural entrance, which they've blocked off. As you can see, the soil mound is just behind there. I think that's all I have, Chairman, in terms of the presentation. You'll see there is an objection from the parish council, who feel this is going to be seen from miles around, but from the photographs you'll see that there are a number of operations there already, the buildings, the high trees and hedges. So it will be tall, but it won't have an adverse impact on the surrounding landscape, given where it is and given how long it's been there. So it's unlikely to have that significant impact. The local member, I don't think, has any comments to make. He has responded, but he says he has no comments to make on this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Lonnie. Open to members then.
Can I ask you a question, please? What specifically did the parish council mean by could be seen for miles around?
Chairman, you're as wise as I am on this one, Chairman. That's their view. I haven't got a photograph from a distant view, but I have driven along there, and when you look back across, you'll see the industrial buildings, you see the trees, and certainly I can't see that stockpile, so if it's a couple of metres more, you might see the top of it, but I don't think it's going to have an impact given the sort of agricultural nature of other buildings in the vicinity.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't see a problem with this, and I'll just move the item.
Thank you. Mrs. Richardson.
It was just an observation, actually, because the original permission says it's limited to 5 metres, and yet you've put a slide up there with 8 to 10 metres already. So how do we limit 15 metres?
Chairman, yes. It was a routine visit that we made to the site and noticed that they weren't at 5 metres, and so we said, why is it at this height? And explained why they need it at that height. And having assessed it, we couldn't see a problem with it. So our routine visits will ensure that it keeps to that height.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we grant permission. All in favour? Thank you. That looks to be Unanimous again. Moving on to item number 10. This is a report of delegated permissions for tree preservation orders. I'll move from the chair that we receive and note these. Okay, all in favour though? Okay, thank you. Item number 11, any items, any other items the chairman has decided to take? I haven't any of those. And item 12, chairman's announcements. Well, thank you very much for coming. And of course we'll close the meeting.